Hello, and welcome to Bible Every Morning. It is truly a joy to be with you every morning. Well, on weekends, we just have the Bible, but I show up on Monday through Friday and do some commentary at the end. But we do have this on every day of the week so that you can, if you don't have your own Bible reading time, that you can follow along with us every day and get through the Bible in a year. So without further ado, let's get to it.
10. At that time the Lord said to me, "Cut for yourself 2 tablets of stone like the first, and come up to me on the mountain and make an ark of wood. And I will write on the tablets the words that were on the first tablets that you broke, and you shall put them in the ark." So I made an ark of acacia wood and cut 2 tablets of stone like the first, and went up the mountain with the 2 tablets in my hand. And he wrote on the tablets in the same writing as before, the 10 commandments that the Lord had spoken to you on the mountain out of the midst of the fire on the day of the assembly. And the Lord gave them to me. Then I turned and came down from the mountain and put the tablets in the ark that I had made, and there they are as the Lord commanded me. The people of Israel journeyed from Beeroth-Benejakin to Mosera. There Aaron died, and there he was buried, and his son Eleazar ministered as priest in his place. From there they journeyed to Gudgoda, and from Gudgoda to Jotbatha, a land with brooks of water. At that time the Lord set apart the tribe of Levi to carry the ark of the covenant of the Lord, to stand before the Lord to minister to him, and to bless in his name to this day. Therefore Levi has no portion or inheritance with his brothers. The Lord is his inheritance, as the Lord your God said to him. I myself stayed on the mountain as at the first time, 40 days and 40 nights. And the Lord listened to me that time also. The Lord was unwilling to destroy you. And the Lord said to me, "Arise, go on your journey at the head of the people, so that they may go in and possess the land which I swore to their fathers to give them." And now, Israel, what does the Lord your God require of you, but to fear the Lord your God, to walk in all his ways, to love him, to serve the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul, and to keep the commandments and statutes of the Lord, which I am commanding you today for your good? Behold, to the Lord your God belong heaven and the heaven of heavens, the earth with all that is in it. Yet the Lord set his heart in love on your fathers, and chose their offspring after them, you above all peoples, as you are this day. Circumcise therefore the foreskin of your heart, and be no longer stubborn. For the Lord your God is God of gods and Lord of lords, the great, the mighty, and the awesome God, who is not partial and takes no bribe. He executes justice for the fatherless and the widow, and loves the sojourner, giving him food and clothing. Love the sojourner, therefore, for you were sojourners in the land of Egypt. You shall fear the Lord your God. You shall serve him and hold fast to him, and by his name you shall swear. He is your praise. He is your God, who has done for you these great and terrifying things that your eyes have seen. Your fathers went down to Egypt, 70 persons, and now the Lord your God has made you as numerous as the stars of heaven. Psalm 94. O Lord God of vengeance, O God of vengeance, shine forth. Rise up, O Judge of the earth. Repay to the proud what they deserve. O Lord, how long shall the wicked exult? They pour out their arrogant words. All the evildoers boast. They crush your people, O Lord, and afflict your heritage. They kill the widow and the sojourner, and murder the fatherless. And they say, "The Lord does not see, the God of Jacob does not perceive." Understand, O dullest of the people. Fools, when will you be wise? He who planted the ear, does he not hear? He who formed the eye, does he not see? He who disciplines the nations, does he not rebuke? He who teaches man knowledge, the Lord, knows the thoughts of man, that they are but a breath. Blessed is the man whom you discipline, O Lord, and whom you teach out of your law, to give him rest from days of trouble, until a pit is dug for the wicked. For the Lord will not forsake his people. He will not abandon his heritage. For justice will return to the righteous, and all the upright in heart will follow it. Who rises up for me against the wicked? Who stands up for me against evildoers? If the Lord had not been my help, my soul would soon have lived in the land of silence. When I thought, my foot slips, your steadfast love, O Lord, held me up. When the cares of my heart are many, your consolations cheer my soul. Can wicked rulers be allied with you, those who frame injustice by statute? They band together against the life of the righteous and condemn the innocent to death. But the Lord has become my stronghold, and my God, the rock of my refuge. He will bring back on them their iniquity and wipe them out for their wickedness. The Lord our God will wipe them out. Chapter 38. In those days Hezekiah became sick and was at the point of death. And Isaiah the prophet, the son of Amos, came to him and said to him, Thus says the Lord, set your house in order, for you shall die, you shall not recover. Then Hezekiah turned his face to the wall and prayed to the Lord and said, Please, O Lord, remember how I have walked before you in faithfulness and with a whole heart, and have done what is good in your sight. And Hezekiah wept bitterly. Then the word of the Lord came to Isaiah. Go and say to Hezekiah, Thus says the Lord, the God of David your father, I have heard your prayer. I have seen your tears. Behold, I will add 15 years to your life. I will deliver you and this city out of the hand of the king of Assyria, and will defend this city. This shall be the sign to you from the Lord, that the Lord will do this thing that he has promised. Behold, I will make the shadow cast by the declining sun on the dial of Ahaz turn back 10 steps. So the sun turned back on the dial the 10 steps by which it had declined. A writing of Hezekiah, king of Judah, after he had been sick and had recovered from his sickness. I said in the middle of my days, I must depart. I am consigned to the gates of Sheol for the rest of my years. I said, I shall not see the Lord in the land of the living. I shall look on man no more among the inhabitants of the world. My dwelling is plucked up and removed from me like a shepherd's tent. Like a weaver I have rolled up my life. He cuts me off from the loom. From day to night you bring me to an end. I calmed myself until morning. Like a lion he breaks all my bones. From day to night you bring me to an end. Like a swallow or a crane I chirp. I moan like a dove. My eyes are weary with looking upward. O Lord, I am oppressed. Be my pledge of safety. What shall I say? For he has spoken to me, and he himself has done it. I walked slowly all my years because of the bitterness of my soul. O Lord, by these things men live, and in all these is the life of my spirit. O restore me to health, and make me live. Behold, it was for my welfare that I had great bitterness. But in love you have delivered my life from the pit of destruction, for you have cast all my sins behind your back. For Sheol does not thank you, death does not praise you. Those who go down to the pit do not hope for your faithfulness. The living, he thanks you as I do this day. The Father makes known to the children your faithfulness. The Lord will save me, and we will play my music on stringed instruments all the days of our lives at the house of the Lord. Now Isaiah had said, Let them take a cake of figs and apply it to the boil that he may recover. Hezekiah also had said, What is the sign that I shall go up to the house of the Lord? Chapter 8. When the Lamb opened the 7th seal, there was silence in heaven for about half an hour. Then I saw the 7 angels who stand before God, and 7 trumpets were given to them. And another angel came and stood at the altar with a golden censer, and he was given much incense to offer with the prayers of all the saints on the golden altar before the throne. And the smoke of the incense with the prayers of the saints rose before God from the hand of the angel. Then the angel took the censer and filled it with fire from the altar, and threw it on the earth. And there were peals of thunder, rumblings, flashes of lightning, and an earthquake. Now the 7 angels who had the 7 trumpets prepared to blow them. The first angel blew his trumpet, and there followed hail and fire mixed with blood, and these were thrown upon the earth. And 1/3 of the earth was burned up, and 1/3 of the trees were burned up, and all green grass was burned up. The second angel blew his trumpet, and something like a great mountain burning with fire was thrown into the sea, and 1/3 of the sea became blood. 1/3 of the living creatures in the sea died, and 1/3 of the ships were destroyed. The third angel blew his trumpet, and a great star fell from heaven, blazing like a torch, and it fell on 1/3 of the rivers and on the springs of water. The name of the star is Wormwood. 1/3 of the waters became wormwood, and many people died from the water because it had been made bitter. The fourth angel blew his trumpet, and 1/3 of the sun was struck, and 1/3 of the moon, and 1/3 of the stars, so that 1/3 of their light might be darkened, and 1/3 of the day might be kept from shining, and likewise 1/3 of the night. Then I looked, and I heard an eagle crying with a loud voice as it flew directly overhead. Woe, woe, woe to those who dwell on the earth, at the blasts of the other trumpets that the 3 angels are about to blow.
The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Father, you are in control. If there's nothing else we take from today's Bible reading, is we should take the fact that you are sovereign and providential, and you are in control, and we are grateful that we have a good God. In your name, amen. Okay, I will get to Revelation at the end, but I want to cover some stuff. I got a little bit more time than usual today, so I do want to cover a few things from Deuteronomy and Isaiah. We're going to skip Psalm. Those are the easy ones to skip because the Psalms are just so easy and good in and of themselves. They don't really bear much explanation, but every now and then I do comment on them. But wasting time. I want to get to Revelation. And I'll do that in the last 5 minutes or so. Maybe before then. But so Deuteronomy, I do love the recounting here in Deuteronomy of what happened in Exodus. Moses is here at the end of this 40 years of dwelling in the wilderness. And I know I'm repeating myself over the last couple of days, but this is like bookending this refiner's fire, right? This crucible, this furnace that they have been in for 40 years of just cleansing. The old generation dying off, and this fresh new generation that's just been walking around in the presence of God, right? This new generation has just always known this pillar of fire at night and this cloud at day, and Moses talking with God and having a direct conduit, right? Direct access to the will of the Lord. Not that all of them always cared about that, but none of them could escape the fact that they had a voice that had direct access to God. Like Moses is called a prophet, but he's also a priest. Like this is the beginning of all of the priesthood. Moses has outlined it, and they began practicing these things in the wilderness. So this is the formation of God's people. Keep in mind, all of these things are merely pictures of Christ, right? The temple that Moses went up on the mountain, and God gave him this design of a temple. The temple is a picture of Christ. It's not just a metaphor. Jesus is kind of like a temple. It is literally a foreshadowing of Jesus Christ himself, his body, and the work that he has done. So it's not just the temple that is a foreshadowing of Christ, but it's the priesthood, right? Those who serve in the temple is yet another foreshadowing of Christ. And not only the temple, and the priesthood that's been outlined here in the Torah, but the sacrificial system is a foreshadowing and a picture of Christ. So everything from the beginning here is pointing to Jesus Christ. And so I do love this at the end of this 40 years of testing and trying this, the recounting, because Moses knows his time is about up and he just wants to remind everybody. And as I mentioned yesterday, to start and finish a section is to draw attention, to it. It's like, this is the completion of something, the completion of the beginning of the formation of God's people. And so the details that Moses goes into here about, and remember, and then God said this, and then I did that. And I like clarification, like God said, make a couple of tablets and bring them up the mountain. So it wasn't that Moses took a hammer and chisel and went up the mountain and carved the tablets from the top of the mountain. And God said, make an ark. And it wasn't that they made an ark and they put the tablets in the ark and hauled the ark up the mountain. No. It was, they made the tablets, they made the ark and left the ark down, and Moses picked up the tablets and took them up the mountain, and then the finger of God wrote on them. And then, just these details are important. It's like, this feels like a narrative, not something made up, right? If this was all fable and fantasy, a lot of those details would be omitted, because in fables and fantasies, everything said has some kind of very deep significance. But in a narrative, it's just telling the details of what happened. And so we can have confidence that this is an accurate account of what happened. Now, down in toward the bottom, verse 18, 19, bottom of this. Oh, yes, 18 and 19. I had it right. Speaking of God's character, he executes justice for the fatherless and the widow and loves the sojourner, giving him food and clothing. And in 19, he commands, love the sojourner, therefore, for you were sojourners in the land of Egypt. Sojourner, what's that? The homeless, a wanderer, a nomad, a person that doesn't have a land, a place to call their own, a sojourner. And that speaks to me because that is me. I am a sojourner. And there's the kind of the Christianese phrase, we are, not of this world, and we are temporarily here. This world is not my home. And songs, good old hymns written about, this world is not my home. But the fact is, the world is this world, and that's when we in English use the word world. There's different meanings of the word world. Now, when I'm saying world, in one sense, I mean sinful man and the actions of sinful man. In another sense, when I say world, is like planet Earth, right? And so there's this semantic range, this vast semantic range of the word world. Now, I'm not talking about sinfulness and the sinfulness of man. This world is not my home. A lot of people think you're going to get called up into heaven and never live on the world again. Right. And there are songs written about that. And it's just bad theology. It's just bad theology. This world, planet Earth, is our home. Right. And a lot of people say, well, my citizenship is in heaven. Yes, your citizenship is in heaven. And think about the Apostle Paul. He was a citizen of Rome. But he didn't live in Rome. He didn't want to live in Rome. He wanted to go there and spread the gospel there, but he was a Roman citizen. And so he represented Rome. And there's some really good stories in Acts about people freaking out when they found out he was a Roman citizen. And it's like, yeah, you should freak out when you find out somebody belongs to the absolute supreme authority. And that's what it means to be a citizen of heaven. We belong to the absolute supreme authority wherever we are. Right? And the Bible does not teach that we're going to float around in the sky in the disembodied state for all of eternity. It teaches that we will live on the earth forever. All right. But as a sojourner, me personally, now that's all the spiritual side of it, but me personally, I moved more than 30 times in the first 20 years of my life, all across the United States. In different, went to 6 different schools for high school in 3 different states, still graduated in 4 years. And so that sense of homelessness or not having a place that I call my own, or that I have those familiar memories of growing up, go back and visit. And, oh, yeah, I remember growing up in this town. No. Well, I do have that sensation in all those places if I ever go back to them. Oh, I remember living here, but I don't have one place where I grew up and just had these friends all my life, etc. Until now. So I've lived where I live now for about 17 years. I found a home. I landed in a place, and now my kids have the opposite experience. And so I just wanted to throw that out there is like, love the sojourner. And also what this means is the non-Israelite. And I think that's that is what this is about, because these are the Israelites were this uniform nation. There weren't Israelites out wandering, or maybe some of them split off, but this is talking about non-Israelites. So Israel was never this ethnically pure, ethnocentric group. It was the God-centric group, and anybody could come into it. The sojourner could come in and become an Israelite. And that's how we are today as Christians. We are the ultimate fulfillment of this. We should welcome everyone, not just the in-group. Right. Well, obviously, the theological understanding, you have to believe the essentials, but don't reject people because for some reason they're different than you. All right, that's it. Let's go to Isaiah now for a bit. Now, I did skip over completely Isaiah yesterday, and this is kind of important stuff. The Assyria was about to attack, and God strikes the Assyrians 180,000 or something like that dead. And this was one of those hand of God things, right? There's sometimes when God's like, I'm going to deliver you or give you this land. Now go and take it, right? And so it's God doing it through his people. But then there are these incredible acts, like miraculous, inexplicable acts. It's like, oh, God just struck down 180,000, and the Assyrians like, whoa, I guess we're not going to take over Jerusalem or Judah now, because at this point Israel is split into two. It's there's Israel and Judah, and 2 separate kings, etc. But here, and that was chapter 37. Here in chapter 38, we have Hezekiah, like God is delivering. Hezekiah is sick and at the point of death, and he's praying, Isaiah, go to God, help, help, help. And God gives Hezekiah another 15 years. I don't know if it says it in this chapter, but God gives him. And here's one. Yeah, there it is. I will add 15 years to your life. Sorry, I might have been distracted. But there's one thing here in this passage, and I'm not going to have a satisfying answer, that is still a question for me. It's in verse 8. Behold, I will make the shadow cast by the declining sun on the dial of Ahaz turn back 10 steps. So the sun turned back on the dial 10 steps by which it declined. Okay. So this is astrophysics, right? Okay. The sun reversed direction, or it stopped and didn't advance the 10. This is a very declarative statement, and I have never looked into it. But I've never looked into what this means, because there's certain things like Moses striking a rock and water coming out of it. There's some naturalistic explanation, but I mean, there's still a supernatural element. Like, how could Moses have known that this was a water aquifer, a reservoir, and all you need to do is strike it there? How would Moses know where to strike it, et cetera, et cetera? But there's a naturalistic explanation for how the water could have come from the rock. I'm not saying it was that. Maybe it was just God creating water inside that rock, and it was just flowing out like a fountain. You turn on the spigot, I don't know. But I mean, it seems more like, because if you go to that desert now, it's a common thing, finding water in the rocks. But this kind of thing, there's the words that say what they say. And I have friends that are astrophysicists, and I was just reading something yesterday about yesterday was the shortest day in history, right? The shortest. And I don't mean sunlight. I mean the 24-hour period. Yesterday was the shortest day in history ever. that the rotation of the earth accelerated just like a fraction of a second, and they can measure them, right? And so yesterday was the shortest day ever, but then today will not be as short as that day. It doesn't get faster and faster and faster. So there's these variations within the planet or within the systems, all these complex systems that make us, make this place habitable. So there are changes always happening, but this kind of thing, of course, God can do it. Is there a naturalistic explanation? Was it the magma under the mantle, shifting suddenly in such a dramatic way? But it just says it and moves on. It doesn't say there were earthquakes or anything like that. So this is curious, and I'm curious if there's a record of that anywhere in the geological record, or and what it could mean. All right, so let's get to Revelation. I did say 5 minutes. It's only going to be 4 minutes and 19, 18, 17 seconds. All right, Revelation. Now, those who interpret Revelation as something predicting something coming in the future, at this point, it's in the middle of the tribulation. Those who interpret it this way, I do not. I do not interpret this as something in the future. So I think it's in John chapter 2, toward the end of John chapter 2, or maybe it's at the beginning of chapter 3. Revelation chapter 3, 2 or 3, where Jesus says to John, "Come up here and let me show you something." And those who interpret that there's a 7-year tribulation, this section being basically the 7-year tribulation, that come up that's how they interpret the rapture, right? That John being called up by Jesus is actually the rapture of the church out of the earth, right? There's no biblical cross reference for anything like that. That's just an imagination. Somebody reads it into, like, they have a presupposition that there's a 7-year tribulation, and this, Revelation doesn't talk about that. There's no place in the book of Revelation that says there's a 7-year tribulation, nowhere. But for those tied into that theology, that's the hint, like that's their imagination. John being called up isn't really John being called up, or it's a parallel, it's a double meaning of the church being raptured. So in that teaching, here we are in the middle of the tribulation, and all the things happening aren't happening to Christians or anybody else on the earth but the Jews, right? This is so that theological understanding of eschatology says that the church gets raptured out, and then God does something else to the Jews in that 7-year tribulation, and then it's like there's two separate plans. There's a plan for the church, and there's a plan for the Jews. And it's really, sorry if that's your point of view, it's really convoluted. And this stuff here in that framework, every one of these things has some kind of meaning, a predictive meaning of something that's going to happen. But it's all complete conjecture. There's no way to know. And so people get caught up in, and this is one of the arguments against that position is, it's all complete conjecture. You can't read the Bible with any certainty or any, it's like this means that and this means that. And for literally 2,000 years, people have been trying to read meanings into all of these things with the 7 censers, or the 7 seal and the golden censer and the 7 trumpets and 7 this and 7 that, symbolic numbers, and a third of this and a third of that, third of this, all very symbolic meanings. The futurists, because that's the position that Revelation refers to things yet in our future, is called futurism, and the non-futurist point of view is that when John is called up, he is being given a vision of all of history, not something in the future, but all of history, a vision, and there's a repeat, like a pattern, where that vision of history is told in different pictures. And so from that point of view, the meanings of these things can be tied to historical events. I mean, I'm not totally. I recommend a guy named Kenneth Gentry and another guy named Gary DeMar, who do extensive teaching on this. Kenneth Gentry has a full commentary on Revelation that goes into minute detail in all these things. That commentary isn't out yet, but he has teachings from that. He's been working on it for a while, obviously, as you could imagine. I just want to say the truths of God's immortality, God's eternal an infinite presence and us and our role in it. I mean, Revelation is important. It was given to us, but it was given to the first century church first for a reason. And I think it's a waste of Christian time, waste of time for Christians to try and look at current events and try and match them to any of this stuff. I think it is futile, and it's a waste of your Christian effort and energy. We should be about God's work here right now. Love you guys. Talk to you tomorrow.